I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ, and I'm in recovery for codependency, toxic relationships. I've got 15 years of sobriety from alcohol, and I'm Wingnut. So I want to talk about hope. Tonight's lesson is on hope. Principle 2, earnestly believe that God exists, that I matter to Him, and that He has the power to help me recover. Will somebody turn on the overhead lights, please? Thank you, sir. Happy are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Matthew 5:4. Then, step 2. We came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. For it is God who works in you to will and to act in order to fulfill His good purpose. That's Philippians 2:13. In our first couple of lessons, we talk about the first principle, principle 1, where I realize I'm not God. I admit that I'm powerless to control my tendencies to do the wrong thing and that my life is unmanageable. Then we went into our lesson of denial as well as our lesson of powerless. Now we are in principle 2. In principle 2, we earnestly believe that God exists, that we matter to Him, and that He has the power to help us recover. Hebrews 11:6 tells us, anyone who comes to God must believe that He exists and that He rewards those who earnestly seek Him. That Psalm 62:5 says, yes, my soul finds rest in God. My hope comes from Him. If this is where you are stuck, perhaps as an atheist or someone who doesn't believe in God but rather believes in the God of science, then this is where you're going to have the biggest struggle and the most hopelessness in the very beginning of your journey. The foundation of this program, let alone any 12-step program in its original form, is based on the fact that God exists. When you remove the existence of God, let alone Jesus Christ, God in the flesh, out of the recovery process, you make the choice of only white-knuckling and scraping down to your fingernails in your own efforts every human attempt at sobriety. Having done this process myself in AA 20 years ago, I know personally how painful and scary and fruitless this process is. In the first principle, we admit we are powerless. It is through this admission of our powerlessness that we are able to believe and receive God's power to help us recover. We do need to be careful, though, not to just cover the bottomless pit of our hurts, hang-ups, and habits with layers of denial or try some quick fix. Instead, we need to keep those hurts exposed to the light so that through God's power they can truly heal. This is why the acceptance of God to begin is so necessary and really allows you to have true recovery. It is the second principle that we come to believe God exists, that we are important to Him, and that we are able to find the one true higher power, Jesus Christ. We come to understand that God wants to fill our lives with His love, His joy, and His presence. Rejecting this basic reality is like buying a brand new car and never filling it with fuel. Science and manufacturers and designers and engineers put it all together, and only they know how to make it work. The owner's manual, then also designed by these same people, explained to me how I can make it work. However, I refuse to acknowledge or even admit that the very source of this power that makes this machine work exists. Therefore, I'm never going to go to a gas station and fill it up, or church. I'm never going to actually access true power that makes this vastly engineered machine work. I'm going to get in it, and I might be able to push some buttons and roll down a window for a time, even play a radio. But the very thing that it needs the most in order for me to get where I need to go in my journey of recovery is the very thing I'm going to ignore the most because I just don't believe that it exists. The pedal is useless. No matter how many times I try and floor it, I go nowhere. I find it very fascinating in this example that God and gas are both three-letter words. Just saying. If you truly want hope in your recovery, then it's at this point in our recovery we have to accept God's existence. One of my favorite parables is in Luke 15, the story of the prodigal son. Who doesn't or who hasn't heard of the prodigal son? Anybody? Okay. Then I will move on. Though the story is about the father's love for his son, it is really a picture of God the Father's love for you. God's love is looking for you no matter how lost you feel. God's searching love can find you no matter how many times you have fallen into sin. God's hands of mercy are reaching out to pick you up and to love you and to forgive you. Ladies and gentlemen, this is where you will find hope, and that's what Principle 2 is called. That's why Principle 2 is called the Hope Principle. Let's look at the word hope and what it means. Higher power. H is for higher power. O is for the openness to change. P is for power to change, and the E, expect to change. Now, I'm going to go over these a little more, so don't panic if you didn't get all those. H stands for higher power. Our higher power is the one and only true higher power, and he has a name, Jesus Christ. In the past, you may have believed in Jesus' existence, and you may have even attended church. There's a huge difference between becoming a fan of Jesus versus a follower of Jesus. But you will find in Principle 2, it is a personal relationship with Christ. You will see that Jesus desires a hands-on, day-to-day, moment-to-moment relationship with us. Have you ever had to try to have a relationship with somebody, but you never did anything but maybe see them once a week for about an hour, and then you didn't even spend any real time together with him or with whoever that is? How good of a relationship do you think that's going to be? We have to develop that relationship with God and with Jesus in order to accept that power that we need for our recovery. He's the only one that has the power. For he can do for us what we can never be able to do for ourselves. Romans 11:36 says, everything comes from God alone. Everything lives by his power. Many people today believe their doubts and doubt their beliefs. Have you ever seen an idea? Have you ever seen love? Have you ever seen faith? Of course not. You may have seen acts of faith, acts of love, but the real things, the lasting things in the world are the invisible spiritual realities. This leads us to the first 4 words of the second step. We came to believe. Saying that we came to believe in anything describes a process. Belief is a result of consideration, doubt, reasoning, and concluding. The prefrontal cortex, located just behind your forehead, is what we need to engage this critical decision. This is your brain center for decision making. It helps you with options, plan for the future, and manage impulses. We're all here because we don't manage our impulses very well. Just saying. The same place that decides whether God exists or doesn't exist is this frontal area. It is the place where we decide to access that power. It is the place where we decide to get the gas to make our new car go. In 2 Corinthians 12:9, Jesus tells us, "My grace is enough for you. For where there is weakness, my power is shown the more completely." The next letter in hope is O, which stands for openness to change. What is the process that leads to solid belief, which leads you to change your life? Let's look at the first 4 words in step 2 again. We came to believe. We came. We took the first step when we attended our first Celebrate Recovery meeting. We came to. We stopped denying our hurts, hang-ups, and our habits. We came to believe. We started to believe and receive God's power to help us recover. We got gas. We came to accept that there is a gas that needs to be put into the new car in order to make it go vroom. Hope is openness to change. Sometimes we are afraid to change. Even if our past was painful, we resist change because of our fear of the unknown. Or in our despair, we think we don't deserve anything better. It's like sitting in the garage with this brand new car, never putting gas in it. And you don't want to go anywhere because it's more comfortable to just sit there and not go anywhere than it is to really kind of step out. Right? Here's the good news. Hope opens doors where despair closes them, even garage doors. Hope discovers what can be done instead of grumbling about what can't be done. Like grumbling that every time I step on the gas pedal, nothing happens. Throughout your life, you will continue to encounter hurts and trials that you are powerless to change. But with God's help, you can be open to allow these circumstances and situations to change you, to make you better, not bitter. Ephesians 4:23 gives us a challenge to that end. Now, your attitudes and thoughts must be constantly changing for the better. You must be a new and different person. How will you do that? The letter P tells us about power to change. The gas! In the past, we may have wanted to change and were unable to do so. We could not free ourselves from our hurts, hang-ups, and our habits. In Principle 2, we understand that God's power can change us and our situations. Philippians 4:13 confirms it. For I can do everything God asks me to do with the help of Christ, who gives me strength and power. Power to change comes from God's grace. You see, hope draws its power from a deep trust in God, like that of the psalmist who wrote, "Lead me, teach me, for you are the God who gives me salvation. I have no hope except in you." That's Psalm 25:5. In Principle 2, we begin to understand that God's power can change us and our situation. And once we tap into that power, once we put the gas in our car, Those are the right actions, Christ-like actions. We follow naturally as byproducts of working the principles and follow the one and only higher power, Jesus Christ. The last letter is hope. In hope is E. Expect to change. Expect to change. Remember, you were only at the second principle. Don't quit before your miracle happens. With God's help, the changes that you have longed for are just a few steps away. Philippians 1:6 expresses my heart. I am sure that God who began the good work within you will keep right on helping you grow in His grace until His task within you is finally finished on that day when Jesus Christ returns. You know, you can't do anything unless you get started. So how much faith do you need to get started? Matthew 17:20 tells us, if you have the faith of a small mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you. It's reassuring to know that you do not need large amounts of faith to begin the recovery process. You need only a small amount, as small as a mustard seed, to effect change, to begin to move the mountains of hurts, hang-ups, and habits. Just a squirt of starter fluid can get that engine to come to life. Imagine the process with a full tank of gas. Eternal life does not begin with death. It begins with faith. Hebrews 11:1 tells us that what faith is. Faith is confidence in what we hope for and the assurance about what we do not see. Faith, even faith like the size of a mustard seed, so small you can hardly see it, is the avenue of salvation. You can't find salvation through intellectual understanding, gifts of money, good works, or even attending church. No, the way you find salvation is described in Romans 10:9. If you declare with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. It's vocalizing that knowledge, that acceptance. Yes, all you need is just a little faith. If you will put the faith you have in Jesus, your life will be changed. You will find hope in the only higher power, Jesus Christ. His Spirit will come with supernatural power into your heart, and it can happen to you, because I know it happened to me. Tonight, I encourage you to take this step of hope. It will give you the courage to reach out and hold Christ's hand and face the present with confidence and the future with realistic expectancy. Simply put, my life without Christ is a hopeless end. With Him, it's an endless hope. It's just like I have a whole 18-wheeler tanker, a tanker truck full of gas with me at all times, and that no matter how far this journey takes me, I have everything I need to get me there. Thanks for letting me share some hope with you.